All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 172. It's Tuesday night. This is when we like to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about in college football. I'm your regular co host, Bobak Ha'Eri. Going to be joined by Andrew Sagona, our regular contributor. I hope all of you had great holidays. I'll tell you what, I have absolutely lost my voice. I don't know how, but we're here. Let's talk some college football. Let's enjoy every second of this. So I see Andrew's here. I'm going to go ahead and let him up, and we'll start this going. I see John's already requested. I hope everyone's had a good holiday. I'm here in my wonderful hometown of Bakersfield. It's been a good weekend. I honestly did not do anything that should have made my voice leave me, but I think I got a little sick, and right there, my voice decided to take a holiday. But we'll keep this going. Lots of stuff to talk about. Hey, Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
A lot better than you, apparently.
Yeah. So yeah, so
Man, I did not realize how bad you sounded. Good Lord.
yeah, so oh, by the way, of course, I should say we've got some games going on right now. Minnesota, well, earlier today beat Bowling Green. Texas State, and I love it. Minnesota beat Bowling Green to go to 6-7 because they were the only five win team that was let into the bowl system this season. Texas State just beat Rice. We have a reporter in that stadium, and his tweets have been hilarious because apparently the Texas State fans are downright voracious when it comes to booze. So they've been all over that stadium. By the third quarter, they ran out. By halftime, they were running out, but they drank the entire SMU stadium, Harold Ford Stadium, completely out of beer. So it was a complete victory for Texas State. Their first ever bowl game. They won it, and they won the beer bowl against Rice. So all I got to say is we got to get Texas State scheduled for LSU. We got to get them scheduled for Wisconsin. Texas State, like for reals, they are an absolute powerhouse with this drinking scene thing. But meanwhile, we got the Guarantee Rate Bowl. Kansas and UNLV are tied, so that's kind of where we're at right now in college football at the moment. But there's a lot more going on than that. Hey, John, what's going on?
Hey man, I gotta go agree with Andrew here. I definitely sound a lot better than you do tonight.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's embarrassing. I have no idea what happened to my voice, but it just decided to go. It decided to go on holiday. It opted out. I guess it knew it was bowl season, so my voice said, "Nah, I'm not playing in this one, Haas," and opted out. But there we go.
I thought you were maybe at the Texas State game. That's from how you're sounding. But hey, my question, and either you or Andrew can answer it because I know you're a little bit rafty right now. But I know it's weird to talk about Colorado and Deion Sanders in the middle of bowl season, but I saw something very interesting on the Reddit page this week, and in which that regards of how Deion recruits. And anyone who didn't see the post is Deion philosophy. He recruits in a 40-40-20 method, which he goes for 40% grad transfers, 40% undergrad transfers, and then 20% of high school recruits. I guess my question for you and anyone else that wants to come up and discuss it is that do we think that that could possibly be the future of recruiting for a lot of other Power Five programs if it's not already? Um, I I can see the viability in it. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of possibilities in that model, especially when you're recruiting more proven players versus high schoolers. So I thought that was interesting. I'm just kind of curious what you guys think of that whole recruiting philosophy.
Well, you kind of hit it dead on the nail there. You're looking for proven commodities. I mean, you can be a five-star blue chipper all you want in high school, but sometimes it doesn't pan out. And then to take UCF, for instance, you had a three-star tight end who ended up playing quarterback, Blake Bortles. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get uh, when they're coming out of high school. I mean, the the optimist glass half full person in me wants to kind of keep a balanced system of transfers and high school. But I realize if Deion Sanders has success with this system, the 40-40-20, everyone is going to start copying it. I mean, take Texas State, for example. They had a ton of transfers as well. They got to their first bowl and they won and apparently outdrank Rice.
That might
Um,
not be a challenge, though. I got
so
to say, out drinking rice, I don't know. But hey, I want to echo that they were the second highest transfers this season. Like everyone was paying attention to Dion's roster, but like I think it was like somewhere in the mid 40s was exact how many transfers that they got on that GJ Kinney program at Texas State. So they're like the success story, but they kind of, for better or worse, probably for better, got overshadowed by what was going on with Dion.
Yeah, look at Tulane. I mean, Tulane is there's a go to success story about regarding the portal. I mean, Tulane is it. I mean, that program that was, if I'm correct, 1-11 at one point, and then with the transfer portal, flipped the team around, beat USC in the bowl game that year, and then up to this year, I mean, essentially almost ran the table again, almost got to another um, New Year's Six bowl for a second year in a row. I mean, like you said, Andrew. I mean, I think if Dion really, if he's successful and this is the method he uses, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how recruiting ends up because of that. It makes me wonder if more G5 programs end up getting more high school recruits because of that, and maybe the talent pool maybe starts to you get a little more parity in the talent pool. But yeah, just a very interesting thought I noticed this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing I would caution is no one's entirely certain what works at this point. It's only been, it hasn't been enough years for anyone to have come up with the magic formula. So, I mean, I remember everyone was saying you can't really transfer the linemen. They're harder to get. You kind of have to build them. And then Dion runs out and like immediately after all of these articles were being written, grabs several linemen. Of course, how they play in unison, can they play as a group? We'll see how it goes. There's so much TBD right now that, the last two Heisman quarterbacks were both transfers. One was a first year transfer. Now this year, all three of the quarterbacks were second years transfers. It's going to be really interesting to see each year that passes. I mean, we're probably watching, a guy like Dion also learning on the fly. He's saying what he's doing now, but he isn't. He's not stupid. If it's not working, they'll probably adjust it as they move on. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And for better or worse, we're living in interesting times because in so many different ways, things keep changing. And it's not just transfers. It's, everything from the rules of the game to the conferences to how players are being compensated. It's utterly fascinating. Andrew, I know you wanted to follow up real quick.
yeah, I was just gonna say, as I was thinking about this, I remembered I think it was West Virginia court where it has the restraining order on the NCAA uh, for the 1 year sit rule for second time plus transfers. Man, if that restraining order is made permanent and or the NCAA decides that it's not going to have that transfer sit out year rule again, oh boy, the transfer portal is going to be gasoline on a lit fire. It'll be interesting to see what would happen if that occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I always say, as long as coaches can do that, it's kind of, I feel a little bit more, my heart's a little more towards the players and that kind of argument, only because, we've seen that. I forgot, oh, his name slipped my mind. But I remember the coach who he was at Tulsa, goes to Pitt for 1 year, and then immediately goes to Arizona State. Imagine if you're a player at any of those three programs. Now, of course, they have the rule where they don't have to they can get a free transfer if their coach leaves. But I don't know. I get it, but at the same time, if the players aren't happy where they're at, do you really want them there? If they're the type that aren't going to wait it out, because there was actually a good article in the Athletic sometime in the last couple of days. I ended up reading it today about the quarterback that's actually starting for USC against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl. He's been there for like a couple of years. He's kind of was forgotten, but he never transferred. Like they recruited him. He comes in, he backs up, Caleb Williams, and then they get Malachi Nelson, who's a 5-star guy ahead of him, and now Caleb Williams is going to play. Malachi Nelson's transferred out, and he knows they're still actually clearly actively trying to get a transfer quarterback. Will Howard keeps coming up, and they're trying to get a transfer quarterback at USC. But no, this is this kid. I think his last name's Moss. This is his time to go play. So there's going to be players like that. But no, I agree. We're going to see a lot more movement. Hey Trey, you've been really patient. What's on your mind?
That since we're talking about transfers, I was wanting to speak my mind about my Ole Miss Rebels. I mean, Lane Kiffin's done a great job, and Pete Golden's also done a great job. I just want to. What do you think our chances are as just contenders for the national championship next year?
Oh my goodness. So, the Peach Bowl is such an exciting matchup because you've got Penn State, you've got Ole Miss. I think it was Pat Forty nickname it the Glass Ceiling Bowl because there are two programs that do well and then seem to always hit something where they just can't quite get past. Obviously Georgia and Alabama for Ole Miss or Ohio State and Michigan for Penn State. But I think both teams, I mean, it's not rocket science to see both of those teams are going to benefit from the expanded playoff starting next year. Because this year, Ole Miss would have been in the playoff. They would have been, there's a question. I think technically it would have been Georgia, but they think they would have maybe played some magic to swap some of the teams just so that you don't get an SEC, first round game. It might have swapped it so they play Ohio State or something. But so they've got enough, to get there. I think really it's tough when you've got like legendary coaches on the other side. Nick Saban, say whatever you want. The guy is his results were in question. This season in particular, his ability to rely on changes and trust Tommy Rees to like tweak that offense until it really looked terrifying is something else. But I think if Ole Miss, they seem to have the ability to be a program where if maybe not each year be going for the national championship, regularly, like a couple of years, they'll always have that program that can move forward. And certainly Lane Kiffin figured out like he was one of those guys that when the transfer portal arrived, he was like ready for it. NIL, he was ready for it. Like the stuff that he was generating, just his online personality, which is by the way quite different from his in-person personality. He's quite a mild guy if you ever interview him. If he doesn't want to be like entertaining, he absolutely is not entertaining. Like it's a remarkable difference with his personality because he's smart. I'm not going to say it's because he's being a jerk. He knows when it's worth it. But I think Ole Miss with what they're doing with Lane Kiffin at the helm, they certainly have that ability to at least every couple of years have a year where they could challenge. And even if the way I look at it for Ole Miss, and I keep bringing up Penn State only because they're so similar and they're playing each other. There's going to be a year you figure where they get into the playoff, and Georgia or Alabama has a bad playoff round, so they get eliminated by a promising program from another division, from another conference, and then Ole Miss might actually be able to keep moving. So suddenly you see Ole Miss moving up to the quarters or the semis when one of those other programs didn't make it. So it seems more favorable only because part of the reason I also like the playoff is you get theoretically you get these programs out of their conferences, so you start to see okay, well when Michigan isn't playing, strong defenses with so-so offenses, how are they going to do? And we're going to see that with Alabama, especially when we see them, with that matchup with Jalen Milroe. But I think the future it should be optimistic, particularly if you're a fan of if Ole Miss, because it seems like this system should be one that will give them more opportunities. Andrew, I know you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, I just took a quick scroll through Ole Miss's schedule for next season, and I mean, if you win the games that you're supposed to win, and I think I did the math, and I think seven of the teams that you're facing next season had losing records this season. You have a pretty easy start to the season. You've got Middle Tennessee at home, then you're at Wake Forest, then you're back home against Georgia Southern, and you've got powerhouses such as South Carolina, Arkansas, and Florida. No offense to any of those fan bases. So yeah, if you can do well and get to 9 or 10 wins, as Bobak mentioned, you have the expanded playoff. Um, who knows what could happen? And once you get into those one game playoffs, things just go completely out the door. You never know if you can pull an upset against a Georgia or an Alabama if you run into them, or uh, Florida State or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to also just, I saw we had a comment in the, because if you want to just send us a message, you can just hit they've got like a comment window on this. And Ski Masks Murphy, who's a regular guest, he's unfortunately, he couldn't join us, but he added a question because he wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, FSU's in the news with their challenge to the ACC grant of rights and the Michigan allegation. Michigan allegation, there's nothing really new there. It's actually it's the old allegation that they at the beginning of this season self-imposed the 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh. It was all over contact during the COVID no contact period. I mean, it's ages ago. I mean, we're literally talking about like a cheeseburger or something. But that was the new allegation with Michigan. New is a relative, way of saying it. The NCAA just charged them on that, and of course, we're not going to hear any kind of results on that until well after this season is concluded. If again, I doubt it's going to have any impact on this upcoming playoff. But going over to the kind of the bigger question, the hotter question right now, which is FCC. Boy, I combined them both. That's really funny. Uh, Florida State and the ACC. I mean, obviously they're challenging the grant of rights. This isn't a huge surprise. I think all that happened was the timeline and the, I would say, the internal sort of politics of FSU's fan base all got aligned really fast when they didn't get into the playoff. And looking for things to blame other than the CFP committee, the fact is they thought, well, if Alabama had the same thing happen, their quarterback get injured, they're 13-0, they would have still been allowed in. So they think, oh, this is the ACC, which to some extent could be. I'm not saying that's an incorrect statement. But for those of you who were paying attention in the offseason, because we talked about it a bit here, and also, and I'm not saying you had to listen to us, but those who are really into the offseason news, the ACC has been, FSU has been kind of hinting that they were really intending this ever since about February of last year, when during some of their board of trustee meetings, they had statements that were made publicly that were not happy with the current financial model of the ACC. We're seeing what the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be making in money. And, the way it's been summarized is we're going to be making $30 million less than Vandy, which in their mind sounded crazy considering the way FSU sees itself and the way FSU performs as a football program. So the problem is, and I kind of was joking when I realized how bad my voice was, that have you ever woken up from, and I didn't get like really drunk, but I mean, like, have you ever woken up from such a bender that you find out you signed something like the ACC grant of rights deal? And because I mean, they make it sound like they were forced into this. It's like, no, they had their high end attorneys as part of this negotiation. All of the schools did, and they agreed to some incredible statements. By the way, some of you may have heard this, but the grant of rights, the reason the media is so bad at reporting on it is because no one can see it. It's only one copy, and it's at ACC headquarters. I mean, like the comparisons to some of the movies like National Treasure stealing the Declaration of Independence, it isn't without merit, To see this thing, you actually have to go there. They don't let you make copies. So their teams of lawyers have to go to the ACC headquarters and basically say, like, can we see this paper? They agreed to that. For the record, they agreed to that. Everyone in this agreed to this. And suddenly they want out. Now, I'm not saying they can't get out. So what they've done is they filed an attempt to say that it's unenforceable. I don't want to get too into the weeds of it because honestly, that's really all you need to know. I mean, I'm a lawyer by trade, so is Andrew, but as lay people, as real people, normal as normals, you would not. All you need to know is they're trying to say it's unenforceable. Can they make it work? I don't know, but with the money at stake, and here's by the way the crazy thing. The number that kept getting thrown out is they owe $120 million if they leave, and that's only. I now realize it's only part of it. $120 million is like the base amount they have to go, but then they also still don't get back their media rights because the grant of rights, what it does, it does what it says in the tin. It grants all of their home sports media rights to a partner that is negotiated on behalf of them by the ACC. So they've negotiated all their home games. If you pay $120 million and get out, it doesn't mean you get your home game rights. You still have to then negotiate for your home team rights. So that could suddenly add an incredible amount of money on top of it. That's why some of these numbers being bandied about are like $200 million. So that's why, yeah, the attorney's fees to see if this is feasible are worth it, because if you can get it ruled unenforceable, then suddenly you have a way out. Andrew, I know you wanted to add a bit to this. Oh, Andrew, did did I lose you there?
I was sorry. I was trying to turn my mic on. The Twitter app is very hard to deal with sometimes. I'm also popping in more just to kind of sub in because you need to get some like hot tea or something. So I don't know where I heard this number, and I don't know if it's accurate or not. But someone was saying like maybe in like the $500 million range if they decided to break the grant of rights. I mean, the lawyer in me, and I'm just to clarify so I don't get in any trouble, I'm not an attorney yet. I'm not barred. I'm just a lawyer, which means that I've graduated law school. Florida bar, please do not suspend me or something for saying that. Anyway, you have to imagine that the board of trustees at FSU has been debating this for, well, as Bobak said, this has kind of been a long time in coming. The snub was just kind of the trigger, and the whole quote unquote so-called Power Five. I know what Boo Corrigan, or was it, I forget it. No. It was not Boo Corrigan. Hancock. Um,
Bill Hancock, the executive director of the CFB.
Thank you. Said so-called Power Five, and I know what he was talking about because for, I guess, legal reasons, they say that there is no such thing as a Power Five. They say it's an Autonomy Five, but the way it came out kind of gave extra incentive for FSU to say we need to get out of here. So if the Board of Trustees makes a move like this, they're not going to do this without making especially clear that they have a good case. And I think, however this turns out, someone is going to be a big loser. Either FSU has to stay in the ACC or pay a ton of money to do it. The ACC loses one of its high-profile programs, and they start to crumble, and other teams will start to break the grant of rights. Who knows? The only winner here are the law firms, and those sweet, sweet billable hours.
Billable hours, baby. Lawyers win. That's the way it always works for us. I got to say, one of the funnier things that came up, because you brought up the strength of the argument, and I have to say, two things. One thing I always tell people, whenever you're reading a news story about a lawsuit that was just filed, please know you're reading one side of it. You're reading the plaintiff. The entire article is being written off the plaintiff's brief. So in this case, it's going to be written based on what FSU's lawyers are saying. And as lawyers, we get it. You say everything you can, even if it's not the best argument, you make all your arguments. Like you make the strong arguments, you make the weak arguments. So some people were going through what FSU submitted and kind of picking out some of the more absurd things they said, because they said, they were really upset about the fact that Stanford and Cal and SMU were being asked to join, because they were very clear that they were not on board, so they must have been outvoted. But they said, like, well, if you're looking at the results of this season, they shouldn't have let in Stanford and Cal. They should have let Oregon State. And part of me, okay, all right, look, I feel bad about what's happening with Oregon State and Wazoo, but Cal and Stanford are a little bit different in a lot of ways, and they certainly have their strengths. But again, it's the things you do, and I have to say, I was reading over some of the comments on RCFB, because those are usually the best part about it, right? And one fan, and again, he's not even a fan of either of these schools. He's writer, haha. He wrote, SMU just rolled up in a G-Wagon, leaned out the window, lowered their Gucci shades, and said, "Be mad then." Which, if you know anything about SMU, that is absolutely on point for that group. But Andrew, I know you wanted to add a little bit, and John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I see John. I was just going to say that. What was I going to say? Yeah, just kind of following up Bobak's point about stuff that goes into the complaint, which is the first thing that's filed. I have seen some absolutely ridiculous things filed in complaints. And I think the point of the whole them trashing on SMU, Cal, and Stanford is they're trying to show, and again, this is just me guessing. I don't know what's going on in their lawyers' heads, but my guess is they're trying to show that the ACC was operating in bad faith or whatever language you want to use to kind of say, look, they breached the contract first by diluting the media rights. So because they breached it first, we can, if just quick contract law, if someone breaches a contract before you do, then there's no penalty for that second group to breach and leave the contract. So I think what FSU is trying to say is because the ACC breached their whatever you want to call it, that means we're free to go. And if that's the case, then they can get out of that scot-free with maybe perhaps no money having to pay out. But that'll be interesting to see if that ends up being what that was all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't help but hearing Stallone in First Blood. They drew First Blood. But anywho, John, what's on your mind, man?
Well, I think Andrew, you said it before I do, but man, shout out to the billable hours because that's gonna be the only winner of this entire thing. It's a better chance of a national treasure movie being made about this this grant rights being stolen than the actual this thing being overturned, at least in my opinion. But I was good. This mission about the about the Michigan situation. I'll be honest. I doubt future Chicago Bears coach Jim Harbaugh is going to care about this whatever this cheeseburger allegation rules in about 2 to 3 years from now. So I think that's a complete nothing burger from this point forward.
Yeah, no, we'll see. And I think, yeah, the fact that this is going to be settled, however many months or even years from now, it's nice. But I doubt it. If the other stuff hasn't been a distraction, especially the Connor Stallion stuff, that ain't going to be a distraction at this point heading into the semifinal. I mean, Alabama's a big enough distraction as it is. I saw, by the way, before I forget, it looks like Kansas is building up a heck of a lead. They're up 21-7 on UNLV in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And my voice is currently, I would say, doing all right in the second quarter, considering how many opt-outs I had in my vocal cords. But let's see, I see we have Ice Devil of Carlsbad. He wrote into the comments, suppose FSU, Clemson, UNC, and Virginia left the ACC. Would any remaining teams who wish to leave do so right away or wait a few years until the ESPN deal presumably ends? Okay, so there's a lot to kind of unpack there because the way the deal is written, and this is where it gets kind of fascinating, because part of the strategy the ACC had in adding the three teams was that by padding out the membership, even though the ESPN got a sweet deal out of this, it doesn't expire until 2037. They can extend it to that point, and they can unilaterally decide, I believe, after 2026 or something like that, to keep the contract going at the exact same dollar amount. So it's a sweet deal for them. I believe it was a trade-off for creating the ACC network. But one of the things, the way the contract was written, as long as the ACC keeps a certain number of members, they don't have to renegotiate the deal. Now, why is that in benefit to the ACC? If Florida State bails on you and Clemson bails on you, suddenly I think everyone can say the value of the conference is going to have dropped a little bit. But if they can't break it until X number of teams are there, having Cal and Stanford and SMU, suddenly you didn't drop below that number. So ESPN is still stuck paying you the amount they were before. So, if you're, I'm not going to single out any team, but if you're one of the teams that isn't necessarily rushing to leave for somewhere because your value, that might be beneficial to you. He brought up another interesting point where if Florida State manages to successfully challenge the grant of rights, it is very well known that Clemson's going to want to come out as well. You're going to get a lot of interest from, because over the summer, or say over the off season, we heard that there were other programs also interested. UNC is a very valuable program just overall in all sports. So is UVA and Virginia Tech. Miami is always interested. So you'll get an interesting situation where certainly there will be teams, and you have to remember, like there was a news report that came out in all of this that, the SEC has not voiced that they're interested in Florida State. There's some people there who say they're skeptical of it. I say, okay, that's good if you're the SEC because you want to say that. Because right now, we don't know what's going to happen here. The ACC is going to try to hold on to Florida State. And if one of the other conferences says, we would give Florida State a home in the middle of this fight, then you open up a whole other range of potential litigation where those conferences could get sued for basically what amounts to interference with the negotiations. That's something that can be sued on and has been sued on in many other industries. So we're not going to hear the Big Ten or the SEC say, "Oh yeah, we'll totally take them." But if they were suddenly to become available, I guarantee you they'll start looking really hard, and they will absolutely. It'll be interesting to see where they find a home, though. Some of the arguments for why Florida State would or would not be interested in the SEC, why the SEC would be interested in them, they're interesting. But I think overall, if the dollar amount is there, they would absolutely take them. The Big Ten becomes interesting, not because they might take Florida State, but because I could see them getting into a bidding war with the SEC over like UNC or Virginia, because that brings them into new markets. Those are big enough names. Miami would be a fascinating one because they kind of check a few boxes for the Big Ten. They're an AAU school, like the academic prestige thing, which FSU currently doesn't have. So, I mean, that would be the one I'd also be kind of interested in. And that would, honestly, on a personal note, that would fulfill my lifelong dream of seeing USC and Miami in the same conference, because those two schools are basically the same school except on opposite coasts in so many ways. But Andrew, I know you wanted to add to that, and John, I see your hand up.
That's actually a very interesting lifelong dream. I was just also going to mention I need to start writing these down when I have ideas. Otherwise, I'm going to forget them. You know what? I forgot what I was going to say. So
No worries, man. Hey, John, I see your hand up. What's on your mind? Yeah, no. By the way, as for my lifelong dream, dude, I came out of the womb. I didn't say, wow. I said, you know what? Here's my thought. USC, Miami, same conference. What do you think, Doc? So go ahead, John.
Oh my goodness. Actually, well, I did have a quick question. Just regarding, speaking of conference realignments and stuff, just about Oregon State, Washington State. I know you probably saw as well. They moved a lot of their sports over to West Coast Conference, minus football, which I thought was very interesting. And it seems like, you can correct me, it seems like they're riding on a technicality which lets them be Pac-12 members, sort of, for the next 2 years. So I'm just kind of curious what you think about that, and what you think they're what strategy they're going with, if there is any strategy. I guess it's a really weird one.
So, Bobak, you mind if I take this? I'll give your voice a little bit of a
man,
break.
go for it. My voice could use it.
So the NCAA has basically a grace period where if your school falls below, I want to say 8 teams. If it falls below 8 teams, you get 2 years where you can still operate as having a conference championship and all of the wonderful things that come with being in FBS conference. You get 2 years to kind of pick up the pieces and figure something out. So for Oregon State and Washington State, you get 2 years of TV revenue from your contract, and you don't have to share that with anybody. you're splitting that 50-50. That is a ton of money coming in. Just I would have to hazard a guess and almost think that they would be the highest paid teams in terms of TV revenue for the next 2 years in any of the conferences. So they don't have to rush into, I don't know, poaching the Mountain West or becoming Mountain West 2.0. It's a win-win for them to just kind of take the slow approach here. And that was their operating assumption, but then they went to the NCAA and asked them for an official clarification. And the NCAA did come out and say, yes, they interpreted right. They get 2 years, 2 academic years. So that would mean 24-25 and 25-26. They don't need to get their ducks in line until July 1st, 2026. So they get to make a lot of money and kind of stash it in a rainy day fund.
I would caution, though, that the Pac-12 is facing a lot of litigation that is going to also be inherited by the 2 remaining teams. Like, for example, the Holiday Bowl, we were just talking about it elsewhere, is actually suing the Pac-12 because suddenly they've lost one of their more reliable sources of teams who they were contracted with. So there's going to be a bit of a mess. But at least for the short term, Oregon State and Wazoo will get some money out of it. But also, I see, James, we let you up. What's on your mind?
Well, as an NC State fan, I have to apologize for the whole Florida State situation. We've beaten them the last 3 times we played them, but we didn't play them this year. So if we had simply faced Florida State this year, we would have ended their whole undefeated season, and then none of this drama with the CFP would have been a thing.
See,
so
this is all your guys' fault. It absolutely is.
Yes,
We've been trying to be nice. We haven't brought it up because we respect the guys. But man, I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, well, and it's certainly not the fact that Boo Corrigan, our AD, was the chair of the CFP committee.
Could you? And Boo always had the most you felt bad for him because after they decided not to include Florida State, he has to go and defend it. And in his head, he's like, "Damn it!" And I guess he couldn't even sit in for that discussion.
Right. Well, I saw so many. Folks blaming Boo Corrigan and by extension NC State for the death of the ACC, and as though Boo would have either A, not voted for Florida State's inclusion, or B, had some sort of sway on the rest of the committee to vote against Florida State in the room. It's ridiculous, but that's Florida State Twitter for you. I don't know how much you guys have looked ahead to some of the bowl matchups, and of course we've got a big one against K-State. Obviously, K-State's quarterback Will Howard is transferring out, and I've heard that their freshman quarterback Avery Johnson is a talent, but I don't know. I guess from the NC State perspective, we've only got one major opt-out in the form of Peyton Wilson. Brennan Armstrong is going to be in there, most of the offense, most of the defense. So I'm a little bit puzzled why K-State is favored and why ESPN has them predicted as a 3-1 favorite to win. I don't know. Have you had any chance to look at that game and give your thoughts?
Well, Andrew, let me jump in on that one, only because we were talking about who's going to go first, and then it was before you got to the end of your question. I'm like, okay, I'll go first on this one. So I agree. It's a little weird that it hasn't moved much, especially with Will Howard looking. Avery Johnson's interesting. I mean, they've done some tries to kind of integrate him into the offense to kind of mix up the looks because Will Howard is a different type of passer altogether. But quite honestly, I would have expected NC State to be favored going into this. It's a mystery to me too. I got to be honest with you, and I know, James, that it's not just you, it's not just me. A lot of people are kind of like, why is K-State still favored in this one? I don't have insight to give you. I really don't. It's a mystery.
I think trying to gamble on bowl games is a fool's errand to begin with, but it does.
Absolutely, especially if you're not the CFP, because at this point, and I've talked about it last week, bowl games are going back to what they originally were, which is exhibition games. Because
Hmm.
the original Rose Bowl in 1900, no one went, like Michigan wasn't invited because they were playing Stanford for the championship. They just wanted a big name to come, and then, you got to go enjoy warm weather. Oh, look, the Rose Parade was already in existence. Look at all these roses. Oh, look, tell people back east, hey, they grow flowers in winter in Pasadena. And then, Florida got in on it. Hey, we got oranges in winter, Hey, we got sugar in winter, which I don't know how that makes a difference. But, and El Paso is smart. Sun Bowl. Hey, they're one of the oldest bowl games. So they didn't count for the national championship until the 60s. And even then, it took a while for the coaches poll to come along. That's why you had the weird 1973 championship where Notre Dame had beaten Alabama, or probably I forgot how it worked out, but yeah, Alabama shared a title where they lost their bowl game because the coaches poll went with the final poll, and the AP poll went with after the bowls, and so Notre Dame had won their bowl game and Alabama had lost, and poof, suddenly you get a weird mixed title there. So we're getting to that era before the bowls counted. Players would go have a good time, which I think they should. Have get a little silly. But now it's like you're getting a version of the team you saw. You're not getting the exact version of it, but you're getting, you're getting, I wouldn't insult the city. You're not getting like football product. No, you're getting a football game. But these teams are not quite what you saw for the regular season. In a way, you're getting an opportunity to maybe get a hint of next season. Of course, the transfer portal screwed with that quite a bit. But you're getting an idea of what you're going to see next season. Giving some of the young guys a chance to give reps. Frankly, you could almost move these to the spring and you'd get the same results, where you get some, upcoming players a chance to scrimmage in a game that doesn't really count. But, it's fun to see. Luckily, people keep watching them, so we're going to still keep having them. I mean, when they stop becoming financially worth it, then the people won't. But Andrew, I know
Yeah.
you wanted to add to this conversation.
Yeah, I was going to take kind of the Boo Corrigan angle. I've had the good fortune and the privilege of being able to sit in on the college football playoff phone teleconferences that they hold each week after the rankings are revealed. And I can say, I mean, he is a voting member of the committee, so he obviously deserves some of the blame. But I do feel for Boo because he is the only person that talks to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So any vitriol, anger, what have you, he is their figurehead. He speaks for them. So he is the target of all of this, even if he completely disagrees with what they said. And we don't know. He doesn't speak for himself. He speaks for the committee. So who knows how he felt about the Florida State thing. To your point, it would make logical sense financially or in terms of conference prestige to have FSU be in the playoff as opposed to Alabama. But you never know. But
yeah, I can tell you as an NC State fan, and a lot of NC State fans felt the same way, was as soon as he was named as chair of the CFP committee, we knew right away that meant he was going to be basically handed, sandwiches every week, trying to serve them up to the public. And that, I don't know, I guess there's an element of prestige of holding that position, but
Yeah, because they don't get paid.
right. So, I mean, I don't know what someone in that position gets out of it other than, the prestige of it. But it just,
Yeah.
I knew that it was going to be a losing proposition because it is every year, and this year just happened to be kind of a whopper of a situation. So I feel for him. It is funny when I see people blaming him specifically for killing the ACC because I think that's ridiculous. But yeah, I'll just close on this by saying I would watch out for NC State in that bowl game. It's our opportunity to get 10 wins for only the second time in program history, and we had a shot during the COVID year when UCLA backed out of the bowl at the last minute. And I know that this team and the coaching staff is very motivated to get that 10th win. So this one has a little bit of extra motivation for NC State from that angle. I don't know that K-State has similar motivation going from 8 to 9 wins. 10 is kind of an arbitrary number, but it's a metric that a lot of people and coaches and fans look at as kind of a big deal. You know, the jump from 9 to 10 in terms of prestige is different than 8 to 9. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit on one of the reasons why the non-CFP bowls are still useful, because for recruiting, winning 9 wins certainly looks that exactly, that's a sweeter number. You get alumni who want to, spend more. They're a little more likely to loosen their pockets and make some of those donations. So it does have some payoff, even if the game is a little less meaningful. And I hope NC State is motivated to maybe find out what it means to eat whatever the Pop-Tart mascot that they're talking about is.
you've seen
Because
the trophy, right?
Oh yes, the trophy is a delight. For those who haven't seen it, it looks like your fairly standard, college football bowl trophy. It's got a couple of silver painted Pop Tarts on the side, but the very top is a football on its side, or like kind of at a 45-degree angle, but they've cut like a toaster 2 slots so you can put Pop Tarts in the top of the trophy. That was a master stroke. Whoever came up with that.
Now, we were promised that there would be an edible mascot. I hope
Yes.
this is not the stand-in for that.
I
Like,
don't think so. No, people will actually eat the bowl hosts if that happens. We'll get
yeah,
straight up cannibalism. No, I'm really looking forward. I think everybody's. This is like, again, whoever the people are who are doing the marketing for that bowl are at a whole other level. And I give the Mayo Bowl walked so they could run, but they are absolutely kicking it up to the next level, because there's some mascot, and apparently at the end of the game, they're being kind of vague about it. It turns into an edible mascot. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're going to roll out like the mascot's going to, oh, what if it's a costume mascot? It goes into a toaster oven at the end of the game, which is a fake toaster oven, and then they roll out the baked version of the mascot, so to speak. That would be brilliant.
I,
Did we just solve the mystery? I think we may
I,
have. We're like
I don't know.
David Blaine up in here.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah,
Uh,
the Mayo Bowl is great this year because either Carolina is going to lose or Mac Brown's going to get dumped in Mayo. So it's a win-win either way for NC State fans.
Oh, I
Thanks,
love it.
guys.
Yeah, thank you. John, I heard your voice, and then I know Andrew wanted to kick in on this.
yeah, I was gonna say that's a great idea, but has anyone checked your temperature in the last 30 minutes?
Look, I lost my voice. I feel fine otherwise, but no, this has just been merciless. I have not lost my voice in so long, and yeah, no, it's a fun ride, because I'll literally start talking to somebody, and then my voice will break. But Andrew, what's up?
I was just gonna you hit a lot of what I was gonna say about this being the Pop Tarts Bowl, but I am really hoping that this one sticks around for a while, because I know this bowl has gone through a lot of names recently. It was the Cheez It Bowl for a bit. Um, I don't know, because this was originally over in Arizona, then they moved this over here. At least I think I lose track of how these bowls are named and moved and stuff, but I'm hoping that this Pop Tarts Bowl sticks around for a while, because it's just the meme potential is off the charts. And being from Orlando, I'm always happy for there to be more football held in Orlando, especially over at the Citrus Bowl, which does not get used all that often.
I've said it before. I really kind of hope. My dark idea is that it's a mascot that has like a costume part that you can eat from while the person's inside. Like, you can't actually eat the person, but that they scream for mercy the whole time. And I want it to be red jam, and I want the visiting team to win, because I want those white jerseys covered in red jam. I want people to question their sanity. Like, there was a Rick and Morty episode this season where like they kind of did this, like you don't want to eat the food that they're all eating, because it actually has a wonderful life story. But I kind of want them to go in a dark direction with it, but that might not be, I guess, okay for TV or whatever. But That's my idea. Maybe Netflix can option it. Who knows? Um, before we slowly start wrapping up, because I don't know how long my voice can go here, but Andrew, I know we kind of. What are some of the headlines this week that have also got your attention? We've talked about some of the biggest stories, but what are some of the ones that have hit you got piqued your interest?
Well, I think since we've been discussing a bit about the whole FSU thing, I am just. It was announced today that the judge in the FSU ACC case, um, which is up in Tallahassee court, if I remember correctly, is an FSU alum. So I cannot wait to see the ACC trying to call foul, as it were, saying he has to recuse himself as a conflict of interest. Although I don't think attending the university as one of the parties is a grounds for required
It
recusal.
typically isn't. It shouldn't be, but I can see why. And that judge is in a really pickle of a situation. If they rule against FSU in some way, I'm sure there's going to be some irrational fans who are going to be a bit of an annoyance. Hopefully, just an annoyance. But man, messing with a judge, don't recommend it. If you have friends on Twitter who are a little more irrational, don't go after a judge. That gets a little bit extreme. And it goes, I mean, hell, don't go after anybody. But you're raising the stakes if you're going after a judge. And I'm talking like criminal stakes. Don't do it. But yeah, no, that's not an enviable position for whatever judge that's been assigned to that case.
And then, and just as another note, if you call for the recusal and it backfires, I'm not saying they do this officially, and I would never infer that a judge would hold a bias against one of the parties. I would never infer that. But we are irrational beings. So you have to imagine that perhaps, potentially, I'm not inferring anything, that the judge may hold a little bit of a grudge against the ACC if they made the motion and he decided not to recuse himself, or it was found that he doesn't have to recuse himself, what have you. And then I guess continuing on with Florida State, and as they go to the halftime show of the Kansas UNLV game, they are discussing Tate Rodemaker, FSU's quote unquote starting quarterback who's now transferring. But anyway, a lot of opt outs on FSU's side going into the Orange Bowl versus UGA, not so much. So this is not going to be the hyped up matchup that we were thinking. It's kind of disappointing. I understand why the players are opting out, but you were kind of hoping you had the defending national champion against the team that should have been in the playoff. Both have something to prove, but FSU is going to be a real shell of itself going into this game.
Well, as I said, we're going to see a version of FSU and a version of Georgia in many of these bowls. I mean, we're going to see very interesting versions. But hey, it'll still hopefully be a good game. One other thing I wanted to point out, this is more of a lighter note. One of the funnier tweets, underrated, I don't know, underrated, God, I hate that word. People say the stupidest things like, did you know like Laurence Olivier was underrated? Like, no, he wasn't. Or people, it's code for like, I'm too young to remember this. Like an Oscar nominated movie is suddenly underrated. And you're like, no, I do remember Schindler's List or, or something like that. But going back to one of the funnier tweets this week was Ohio State. Their social media person just doesn't know geography. So they announced that the team was arriving in Dallas for the quote duel in the desert, to the consternation of a lot of folks in the Metroplex or people who just know geography. Not sure if they thought they were going to play in the Fiesta Bowl. Not sure if they just hadn't been to Dallas before. But actually, somebody noticed their deleted tweet because they initially misspelled desert. So it was a showdown in the desert. So they were kind of having a bad time at Ohio State's social media team there. Not the worst error you can make, but I don't know. That's a lighter note. But as you can hear, my voice, which is already bad, is starting to completely conk out. I wanted to take a second to thank all of you who joined us for this Boxing Day edition, Pound for Pound, a fun conversation late at night here on, oh my gosh, on the 26th. I'm Bobak Ha'Eri. I was joined by my co-host, Andrew Sagona, excuse me.
Hang in there, Bobak. You're
Oh
almost
my
there.
gosh, almost there. I'm like crawling to the finish line here. We always love it when you join us on Tuesday nights. We do these every Tuesday night, even if my voice is melting down. This is our CFB Talk 172. Hope you all have a great rest of your holiday. Hope you enjoy some bowl games. There's a game going on right now. There's going to be games going on for a couple of days, and they're all going to be good. We love them all, and we thank you for joining us. Have a great night, everybody. I'm going to hang up and listen.